Okay, so I'm going to go over a few little things on editing bird images, and there's one feature that's just come out in Photoshop in the very new version, so you'll have to download the newest version to do that part, but I'm not going to go into that yet. I'm going to talk more about that, but it is very exciting, especially for bird photographers and what like nature photographers. But I'm going to go over just a basic edit with this. I was with another couple of members of the club. We was taking pictures of these bullfinches, and we wanted flight shots, but of course we got the feeders that are really close. So I'm just going to go over the editing of what I would do to make this look much better and to get rid of this feeder, without getting too technical and using all millions of layers or anything like that. We can do that quite easily with this image. So all we're going to use is the crop tool. So I'm in Lightroom. I'm going to do the basic edit first of all. So I'm going to zoom in, and I'm just going to have a look at the noise in this. The ISO is up at 4000, so it's not too bad with this camera. So I'm going to go down to the detail section where you've got your sharpening. Now the sharpening always comes in at a default, so I'll have a default setting of about 40, and the radius will be on 1. Now I like to reduce that radius down to about 0.7 if I use any sharpening in this mode. I don't usually sharpen, but I'm going to use sharpening in this just a little bit, just to sharpen it up a little bit. So just a tiny bit. I'm going up to about 50, and then I'm really looking at this noise, and it's best in this area to see the noise there. I'm going to take the noise reduction up. So I'm just getting rid of that noise. Okay, so that'll do for that. Now I'm not too worried on the exposure, it's not looking too bad. I might take the exposure up just a tad. So I've just gone up a little bit, and of course that depends on your image. All images are different on this part. Looking okay on that. Right, so this is the important part. It's the actual cropping and how we're going to get rid of this in a very simple way. Get rid of the feeder there. So I'm going to use the crop tool, and I'm going to rotate this just because this feeder's a bit crooked. So I'm going to level that up so I can move this and get it so that feeder is just cropped off. Now the image, obviously we want this bird not to be flying out of the picture, we want it to be flying into the picture. So I'm just imagining that this section isn't there as such. I'm thinking about the left hand side and the position of the bird, because we will be adding more room to this side. Now you may say that's quite a small crop. Don't worry about that. I'm going to go through a way of making this look fairly good without using the new feature, but when we look at the new feature in Photoshop, I think you'll be pretty amazed. Okay, so that's going to be my crop. So it's still, I mean, I'm working on a 4K monitor here, so you know, if you've got a smaller resolution monitor, that would look huge, but that's looking okay. So now what I do is I right click and I go to edit in Photoshop. Okay, so very easy now. We've got the image, but obviously I mean it's not too bad like that, but let's pretend we just want more to this side, and of course that distance from there to there may be much less depending on where the feeder was in the shot. But I'm going to get the crop tool, and this is the important bit. We don't duplicate the layer. We must be working with one layer, so we don't have to go anywhere there duplicating layers or anything. But we're looking at the crop tool and we're looking at the options bar. Now, we must make sure that this is ticked at the top. Content aware, make sure you got a tick in there. And it won't have, so make sure you put it in. So you just tick there and make sure that's on. And the delete crop pixels as well. I always leave that on by standard, so usually it's already ticked, but just make sure that it is. And all we do is this. I'm going to resize this now. So I'll say, well, that's about how I'd want it. I may want a bit less actually on this side, so I'm going to crop it off a little bit. I'm sort of in the third zone, I've got the bird flying into some area, and I'll just click the tick on the options bar and I'll wait. And there we go. More or less like I'd want it. Now we've got a few strange things going on here which doesn't look fantastic. So what I'll do now is I use this tool. So where you've got the spot healing brush and all these tools, you will have the patch tool. So I'll click on the patch tool, and all I do with this is I'll just draw circles around here. And so I'm going to drag that down here, and making sure that we've got use pattern on there, and also that it's on source and not destination, so make sure that's pressed in. And all this will do is you can just go around and you can just blend in these hard lines. Now some of those hard lines is already there, so it's, you know, but I can get rid of anything that looks a little bit unnatural. And just by dragging to different areas, I can just smooth all that out and diffuse that a little bit. Now this going on in the background there is just actually, it's another bird out of focus in the background that was flying in, so I'm not too worried about that, just for demonstration purposes. Okay, so if I double click the magnifying glass, that is the actual size of the image. And you can see now we haven't had to do anything fancy whatsoever. All we've used is the crop tool and the patch tool just to get it how we want. And I could probably do a little bit more. I don't like that up there, and I can just keep smoothing this down by doing that. Now I could do a lot more with that, and I do a lot more with that. Probably the only one thing that I would do for definite is just to lighten up this area just a little bit, just around the head and just this area there. And for that, people who have followed all my courses know I love the lasso tool. So the standard lasso tool, we just click on that, and then I make sure that the feather, so we look on the options bar. Now in this case I want it fairly big, so the feather's going to be about 50 to 60, so it gives it a soft edge when I draw. And I'll just say, okay, I'm going to brighten this area up here. And up onto the head. Very rough, but don't get too close to the edge because it will bleed over into the background, which you don't want. So you want to make sure you're just in a bit, because remember we've got that soft feather on. And then I'll go to the adjustments, so that's on there. And if you can't see that, you can go to window and you can see adjustments on there. So if you're unsure, use that method and it'll come up. And then we look for the curves tool, which is there. We click on that and we simply go to the very middle, click to put a dot on there, and we drag up towards this corner. Not that far. But you can see I can make it darker or I can make it brighter. And it's just a smidgen. So we work in smidgens. It's just that bit there, look. And that just brightens that up just a little bit. If we have a look at before and after, if I just hide that layer, it's just brighten that up nicely. And there we go. So that's a nice, quick, easy way without selecting anything or doing anything. Depends obviously on your background and all those things, but quite often that will work, you know, especially in this case where we got that feeder in the way. It could be something else in the way. It could be a person, it could be anything. It could be, you know, it doesn't have to be a bird. if you've got a nice, fairly plain background, especially, it will work much better. Okay, so that's a quick way of getting a bit more space to the side of your subject. Now in the next video, because I'm going to do it as a separate video, I will show you the new feature in Photoshop that's just come out, and especially for people doing bird photography, you will find it really, really useful.